Logan was exhausted as he drove home through the storm. 24 hours on duty had drained him, and the rain pounded on his windshield like a drum fire. The dark road ahead was a distorted pattern of light reflections and shadows. "Almost home," he murmured, taking the familiar curve on Highway 16. His body ached with fatigue, and he longed for his bed. His headlights caught something on the side of the road. A small, dark figure crouched there, shivering. Instinct overrode exhaustion. Logan hit the brakes and grabbed the flashlight from the glove compartment. He hesitated for a moment. Maybe it was just a piece of debris blown onto the road by the wind. But then he heard a faint whimper. Outside, cold, wet air hit him as he approached the shivering bundle. In the beam of light, he saw a tiny puppy, its wet fur clinging to its body. It was emaciated, little more than skin and bones, and its pitiful whimper made Logan's heart clench. He had seen many things in his career as a firefighter, but nothing had prepared him for finding such a helpless little creature in the middle of a storm. "Hey, little guy," he said softly, taking off his jacket and wrapping the creature in it. The puppy was too weak to resist. Back in the truck, Logan turned up the heat and held the puppy close to his chest. "Tomorrow morning, we'll take you to the vet," he said. The puppy gave him an exhausted look, its dark eyes full of trust. When they got home, Logan carefully dried the little body with a towel. Under the wet fur, it was thin and weak. Logan prepared a nest of blankets near the heater, and the puppy immediately curled up, making a soft sound, a chirp. Logan frowned, but exhaustion left him no time to ponder. Just as he was falling asleep, he heard the strange sound again. It didn't sound like a dog's whimper, but more like a bird's call. A restless feeling crept over him, but his tired limbs wouldn't let him think further. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Dawn was still far off when Logan was awakened by unfamiliar sounds, scratching, soft rustling. He sat up and looked toward the puppy's makeshift bed. The little creature was moving, stretching almost cat-like. The way it unfolded its long legs was strangely graceful. Logan had raised many puppies before, but he had never seen anything like this. "Good morning, buddy," Logan murmured, fetching a bowl of water. The puppy sniffed at it, hesitated, then began greedily licking Logan's moistened fingertip. Logan examined him more closely, the large ears, the unusually long legs. Something was different. "You're a special little guy, huh?" A chirp was the response, almost melodic, and Logan felt a shiver run down his spine. Later, the puppy explored the living room. He ignored the dog bed, preferring instead the shadow under the sofa. When Logan tossed him a squeaky toy, the little creature pounced on it, shook it wildly, and then hid it under the furniture. Logan watched him for a while, noticing how he moved silently, almost like a shadow. "You're not a normal dog," Logan said quietly. He wondered if he should still take him to the vet. The way the creature moved and looked at him, with an almost eerie intelligence, made him doubt. He decided to name the little guy Rusty, fitting his reddish fur that glinted in the morning light. At the pet store, Logan bought food, a collar, and toys. The cashier looked skeptically at the photo he showed her. "Weird looking. What breed is that?" Logan shrugged, not wanting to answer too many questions. Back home, he tested the new food. Rusty sniffed at it, but didn't take a bite. Instead, he carried small pieces to various hiding spots around the house. Under the sofa, behind the trash can, even in a corner of Logan's closet. Strange behavior. At the vet, Dr. Patel examined Rusty carefully. Interesting proportions. Unusually long legs for a shepherd mix. "No," Logan said. "He chirps." Dr. Patel smiled. "Unique." She finished the examination. "He's healthy. If you're curious, we can do a DNA test." Logan hesitated. He is what he is, a little stray who needs a home. But when he heard Rusty's soft, bird-like sounds, a nagging feeling remained in the back of his mind. Something wasn't right. But what? The sun cast golden streaks through the windows as Logan stretched out on the couch. Rusty lay curled up at his feet, his bushy tail wrapped around him. The way he slept, curled up like a little wild fox, made Logan think again. The first days with Rusty were full of new quirks. He climbed onto the back of the sofa with surprising ease, pushed food into cracks, and made almost no noise when walking. He was alert, always attentive, and watched Logan with an intelligence that was almost unsettling. Rusty's behavior grew stranger by the day. During a walk, he suddenly stopped, his body tense. He lifted his nose, listened, and before Logan could react, he let out a high, melodic chirp. An echo responded from the distance. "What was that?" Logan turned sharply, but the road was empty. Rusty's ears twitched, his gaze fixed on the woods. "Come on, buddy." Logan tugged lightly on the leash, but Rusty resisted. He seemed to be searching for or recognizing something. That evening, Logan decided to research more about foxes. He had noticed that Rusty's fur was becoming fuller each day, his gait more elegant, more fluid. His behavior didn't match that of a dog at all. He typed fox behavior into the search bar and scrolled through the results. The descriptions hit him like a punch. Nocturnal activity, chirping sounds, hiding food, the way he slept. Logan clicked on a video of a red fox calling, and the sound was almost identical to Rusty's. "Oh, damn," Logan leaned back, running his hand through his hair. This was impossible. He had been sure he had rescued a puppy, but all the evidence pointed to Rusty not being a dog. A few days later, Logan decided to confirm his doubts. He made an appointment for a DNA test with Dr. Patel. When he took Rusty to the clinic, the little creature climbed onto the examination table with incredible agility, landing silently. The vet frowned. "This isn't normal dog behavior." "I don't think so either," Logan admitted, stroking Rusty's head. "I'd like to do a DNA test." Dr. Patel nodded. "We'll take a sample and send it to the lab. The results will take a few days." On the way home, Logan couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. If Rusty really was a fox, what would that mean? Could he keep him? Would the authorities take him away? A few days later, an email landed in his inbox. Subject: DNA results. Sample 2,847 grams. His heart beat faster as he opened the message. The first line was enough to take his breath away. 100% Vulpes vulpes, a pure red fox. Logan leaned back, the blood draining from his face. Rusty wasn't a dog. He had never been a dog. He was a wild animal. But how could he accept this? Rusty slept beside him, played with him, followed him around the house as if he were domesticated. Logan knew that keeping a fox as a pet was illegal in his state. What should he do? He couldn't just abandon him. Rusty chirped and jumped onto the couch, pressing his nose against Logan's arm. Logan closed his eyes. "What do I do with you now, little guy?" Logan sat at his desk, his eyes fixed on his laptop screen. The search bar was filled with terms like foxes as pets, wildlife laws, and can a fox be domesticated? Every answer he found made him more anxious. In his state, it was illegal to keep a fox as a pet. Rusty was a wild animal, and Logan was a lawbreaker without knowing it. Rusty lay on the couch, curled up, his bushy tail wrapped around him. He lifted his head as if sensing Logan's gaze. His large, attentive eyes glimmered in the light of the screen. Logan swallowed hard. What would happen if someone found out what Rusty really was? The days passed and Logan became more cautious. Rusty was no longer allowed in the front yard, and walks were only possible at night. He couldn't afford any mistakes, but Rusty began to grow restless. He often stood at the door, chirping softly, scratching at the wood. One night, when Logan came home from the fire station, Rusty wasn't in his usual spot on the couch. Panic rose in him. "Rusty!" A sound from the back door made him turn. He ran outside and saw a small silhouette moving at the edge of the woods. "Rusty!" "No, buddy, come back!" But Rusty hesitated. He looked into the darkness of the woods, then at Logan. His body was tense, as if deciding where he belonged. The seconds stretched into an eternity. Then slowly, Rusty turned and ran back to Logan. The firefighter sank to his knees as Rusty pressed against him. Logan wrapped his arms around him, his heart pounding. But he knew now, Rusty was torn between two worlds, and eventually he would have to make a choice. The next morning, there was a knock at Logan's door. His stomach tightened when he saw the uniform of the man on the porch. "Morning, sir. I'm Officer Holloway from the Wildlife Protection Agency. We've received reports of a fox in the neighborhood." Logan forced himself to stay calm. "A fox? Here?" The officer eyed him suspiciously. Several people have seen it near their homes. Have you noticed anything? Logan shook his head, his heart racing. Not really. Holloway studied him for a moment longer. If you see anything, report it. Wild foxes don't belong in residential areas. He handed Logan a card and then stepped back. When he was gone, Logan slowly closed the door. He turned and saw Rusty sitting under the table, his ears pricked forward. We've got a problem, little guy. The next few days passed tensely. Logan noticed every movement in the neighborhood, listened more closely to conversations. Rumors spread quickly. Several neighbors had seen the fox. Some seemed curious, others concerned. Logan did his best to stay inconspicuous. He kept Rusty inside, but he knew this wasn't a long-term solution. One evening, as the wind howled through the trees, Logan noticed Rusty was restless. He paced back and forth, twitching at every sound. Then Logan heard it too, a faint, unfamiliar chirping in the distance. Rusty's ears twitched. He tensed. Logan held his breath. Was it another fox? Rusty jumped onto the windowsill and stared out. Logan stepped beside him and followed his gaze. The darkness swallowed the details, but he had a distinct feeling that something was out there. That night, Logan barely slept. His mind was full of thoughts about Rusty, about the future. Could he really keep him? Was it right to keep him here, or was it selfish? In the morning, Logan drove to Dr. Patel. I need your help, he said seriously as he entered her office. She set down her pen. What's this about? It's about Rusty. I need a solution. Logan sat in Dr. Patel's office, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Rusty lay curled up in his carrier, his bushy tail over his snout. The vet studied Logan with a calm gaze. You have a difficult decision ahead of you. I know, Logan took a deep breath. I don't want to give him up, but if the authorities find out he's a fox... Dr. Patel nodded. The law is clear, but there are special permits for wild animals that can't be released back into the wild. If you can prove that Rusty wouldn't survive in the wild, you might have a chance. And how do I do that? You'll need documentation, his behavior, his dependence on you, his lack of hunting instincts, maybe even a psychological evaluation from a wildlife expert. Logan leaned back, his head spinning. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he would do anything to keep Rusty. The next few weeks were a mix of hope and fear. Logan filmed Rusty's behavior, how he preferred to hide under furniture rather than sleep outside, how he buried his food instead of eating it, how he flinched at loud noises. He spoke with experts, with wildlife rehabilitators, who confirmed that an animal so strongly imprinted on humans would have a hard time returning to the wild. One evening, Logan sat on the couch and watched Rusty, who was curled up beside him, asleep. In the distance, the hoarse call of a wild fox echoed. Rusty's ears twitched, but he stayed where he was. Logan stroked his fur. You belong here, don't you? Rusty responded with a soft chirp. The day of the permit hearing came faster than Logan would have liked. He sat at a desk in the wildlife agency, his collected documents spread out before him. A woman with a serious expression flipped through the papers. You've gathered quite a bit of evidence, Mr. Kerr. I love this animal, Logan said simply. He can't survive in the wild. The woman set the papers aside. We'll have to review all of this, but I see you've put in a lot of effort. That speaks in your favor. Logan nodded silently. There was nothing left for him to do but wait. The following days were torture. Every second the phone didn't ring made Logan more nervous. Rusty sensed his tension and stayed close to him. He even followed him to the fire station, where the crew had grown accustomed to the unusual companion. Eddie, Logan's best friend and colleague, clapped him on the shoulder. Man, you look like you haven't slept in days. I haven't, Logan admitted. If they deny the permit, I don't know what I'll do. Maybe you should start considering a plan B, Eddie said carefully. Just in case. Logan clenched his teeth and shook his head. Number Rusty belongs here. Late at night, Logan sat on the porch, a steaming cup of coffee in his hand. Rusty lay beside him, his ears twitching in the cool breeze. Suddenly, he lifted his head, his eyes fixed on something in the darkness. Logan followed his gaze but couldn't see anything. Rusty jumped up, moved to the door, and began to chirp softly. Logan frowned. "What's out there, buddy?" Then he heard it, a faint rustling, a sniffing. He grabbed the flashlight and shone it into the night. Two bright eyes reflected the light. A wild fox stood at the edge of the woods, motionless, watching. Rusty looked at the fox, his body tense. Logan held his breath. Would he run over? But after a moment, Rusty turned his head and ran back to Logan. The firefighter exhaled in relief. "You've made your choice." Rusty jumped onto Logan's lap and curled up. Logan stroked his fur, knowing he would fight for Rusty, for their home, for their future together. The news came early in the morning. Logan sat in the kitchen, his hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee, when his phone vibrated. With a pounding heart, he grabbed the device and opened the email. Subject: permit for keeping a non-releasable wild animal. His eyes flew over the text. He had to read the section twice before the words made sense in his head. The special permit had been approved. Rusty could stay. A tremor ran through Logan's hands, and he hastily set the cup down before it could spill. Rusty, who was lying on the windowsill looking outside, turned his head and looked at Logan with his intelligent amber eyes, as if sensing that everything had changed. "We did it, buddy," Logan murmured, rubbing his face. He laughed softly as Rusty jumped off the windowsill, pressed against his legs, and let out a soft chirp. Logan picked him up and gently hugged him to his chest. In the following weeks, Logan made changes to his home. He built a secure enclosure in the yard, equipped with climbing trees, hiding spots, and a sheltered sleeping box that Rusty particularly liked. But despite the new freedom, Rusty still spent much of his time indoors, by Logan's side. The crew at the fire station continued to joke about his unusual pet. Eddie even had a small uniform made for Rusty. "He's now officially our station mascot," he explained, grinning, as he handed Logan the tiny outfit. "He's not a firehouse dog," Eddie laughed. "No," Logan held up the little uniform. "But he's family," he replied, shrugging. And that's exactly what Rusty had become to Logan. Family. But even with the permit, Logan knew not everyone would approve of his decision. Neighbors watched him skeptically, and some confronted him. "A fox isn't a pet," Mrs. Thompson said one day, as Logan was with Rusty in the yard. "He belongs in the wild." "He chose his family," Logan replied calmly. The whispers behind his back grew louder, but Logan didn't let it bother him. He made sure Rusty's enclosure met all legal requirements, that he got enough exercise, and that he received veterinary care. He knew he could be inspected at any time, but that didn't faze him. He would do whatever it took to keep Rusty. One night, Logan sat on the porch and watched Rusty leap through the enclosure, his red fur glowing in the moonlight. In the distance, wild foxes called, their voices carrying through the cool night. Logan watched as Rusty's ears twitched, his gaze fixed on the darkness. A moment of silence passed between them. Then Rusty turned and, with an elegant leap, came back to Logan. He lay down beside him, pressed his nose against Logan's arm, and chirped softly. Logan smiled and stroked his fur. "You belong here." Rusty blinked slowly and closed his eyes. The stars twinkled above them, and Logan knew they were exactly where they were meant to be, together as a family. Time passed, and Rusty thrived. His once thin, scruffy fur was now thick and glossy. He had established routines, exploring his enclosure during the day, lying at Logan's feet, or on the windowsill in the evening. Sometimes he seemed to watch the woods, but he made no attempt to leave. One morning, as Logan was drinking coffee, Rusty jumped onto the table and almost knocked over the cup. "Hey, you little devil!" Logan laughed. Rusty snatched a sock from the laundry line and ran off. "That's your thing now, huh?" Logan shook his head. Rusty loved hiding things. Socks, keys, sometimes even Logan's gloves from the fire station. But Logan knew it wasn't about keeping him anymore. Rusty wasn't just his pet. He was a part of his life, an unusual but indispensable companion. Years later, Logan sat on the porch again. His hair had grown a little grayer, his step a little slower. Rusty lay beside him, his once bright red fur now streaked with a few white strands. "We've come a long way, buddy," Logan murmured. Rusty opened his eyes briefly, blinked, and let out a soft chirp. Logan smiled. In the distance, a fox called. Rusty's ears twitched, but he didn't move. He knew where he belonged. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Thanks to our valued viewers, we continue to improve every day. Please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up.